It's the door to the studio. Maybe she's in there.
Hey, Stephen, where you been? I've been trying to call you for a while.
I'm in the studio. I've been here a while. What about you?
Oh, okay, yeah. Sorry about that. I went to take a nap.
I guess that makes sense. Wait, where are you though?
Stephen, you know where I am. I'm in a safe place.
Oh yeah. I remember.
Go tell Aunt Rhody. Go tell Aunt Rhody. Go tell Aunt Rhody that everybody's dead.
So welcome to episode 9 of the Cult of Dangerous ASMR podcast. My name is Stephen, Movie Buff 3000, and this is my co-host Ira Boggle.
Hello.
And like we stated last week, and we've been kind of hinting at for the past couple of weeks, the month of August, we're going to focus on the crossover series of the Dangerous ASMR verse, or whatever the hell it's called. We're going to be reviewing the Vampire series this week. Next week, we will be doing the Witch, and then the last week of August, we will be doing the Werewolf. And then September, hopefully, if a new episode comes out, we will be reviewing the crossover episode specifically. And then after that, who the hell knows what we'll come up with. But yeah, today we are going to be focusing on the Vampire series, along with Dangerous's 2 new audios that came out. And yeah, let's start the show. Boggle, go ahead with the pimping.
Yeah, before we get into the reviews of the audios, as you guys all know by now, we've got to promote all of Dangerous' stuff, yada yada, let's just get through this. So first and foremost is her YouTube, which is where she posts all the safe work stuff, and it's basically the main base of operation. But then she also has the Patreon, where you can get early uploads and Patreon exclusives, some of which are not safe for work, like sexy stuff, and others are just like other things on the side that she decides to upload. And then she's got her Discord, which is where Stephen and I are currently recording this podcast, and she herself comes to visit every Saturday night / Sunday morning. So if you don't want to join the hang with Stephen and I, do it for Dangerous. And she also has a Twitter, although that really acts as more like another notification system, because really the only thing she ever tweets are just like, hey, I dropped a new video. But sometimes she does tweet funny stuff, and if you've got a Twitter, you might as well follow her anyways. It's worth it. And then last and most recently is a Redbubble, where she started to sell some merch. We'll put the links to all of these in the description below.
All right, now on with the review portion. We will be talking about Aftercare with your Dommy girlfriend, which I was really confused on Aftercare for a while. I was like, holy shit, did we get injured and we're in the hospital? But no, it's just seemingly we have sex. Now she's talking to us.
Oh, you sweet summer child, that you didn't know what Aftercare was.
I don't know anything about this stuff, so.
That's how I know you're not that aggressively kinky, because I knew what it was right away.
Yeah, I know. From all the times you had sex, you must know exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm. I am very well experienced in this stuff.
So, I'm gonna kind of disappoint a lot of you people today, and by a lot of you people, I mean like 1 or 2 people out of the 5 that listen to us. I actually wasn't able to listen to both audios all the way through, for very different reasons. This one is probably a better reason than the other one. So specifically, I couldn't listen through this all the way through because both times I did, I fell asleep. Not because I was boring, not because it was boring, but because I was like relaxed. I had my phone right next to my ear, and I just kind of closed my eyes and tried to feel the audio, and yeah, I probably fell asleep like within the first 10 minutes. Both times I tried to listen to this.
See, this is why it's good that he has me as a co-host, because I actually listen to the stuff so that when we do reviews, I know what's up. Because this is like the third or fourth time there's an audio he hasn't listened to.
Second.
And if he tried to do this podcast by himself, he'd be like, well, I didn't even listen to it, but here we go. But luckily, you have me as the backup. I got you covered.
So I'll just kind of quickly go over what I thought about it for half of it. First off, just kind of funny moment thing. When I was listening to it the second time, I woke up. What I thought was like partway through, I was like, Jesus, man, this is way longer than I thought. This is like 18 minutes long. And then it started getting like very mean and a bit more aggressive. I was like, what the fuck? I thought this was supposed to be calming. And I looked at it. It turned out that the video playing after it was the Cuddled by the Countess video, which is both ironic seeing what we're covering and kind of funny because I don't really find that video that comforting. So, like, of course, like I would kind of react like, oh God, no. But that's a funny thing. That's what happens when you listen to when you.
That's why you don't leave autoplay on, children. Don't leave autoplay.
Yeah,
on.
because then you're gonna wake up to some scary shit. Luckily, no horror movies are coming out because I've always had that experience where like I won't have my remote near me, and so I'll be watching YouTube on my TV, and then it's like, oh, look at the Nun trailer. I'm like, it's like 12 in the morning. Can you not show me that right now? Not even just because
Again, always keep autoplay off.
Yeah. And it's not even just because The Nun's a bad movie. It's just I don't want like scary images while I'm trying to sleep. Nun is a bad movie.
I need Dangerous again. Hits replay on the comforting audio.
But yeah, it's kind of interesting that this came out because this came out like the day English is hard. It's kind of funny too because this came out the day after we interviewed Cody and like we talked about the series like quite extensively. So I would like us to take 100% credit because me and Boggle and this podcast that we do, it has amazing power and it leads to Dangerous either bringing back series, her ending series,
finishing series,
or
posting another chapter of a series we talked about in the episode.
Yeah.
So hey, maybe she'll post the crossover sooner now that we're mentioning it. Crossover. Sorry.
If you enjoyed this video, thank me and Boggle because this is 100% us. I'm kidding, but kinda. But I noticed there was no writer credited for this, so this is once again all Dangerous. But yeah, I did find this very comforting. For the bit I listened to it. So yeah, I don't have much more to say, Foggles. You go ahead because you listened to the whole thing.
Honestly, I have to agree with what Stephen said. It was obviously another cute, comforting one. And I'm sure all of our 5 other viewers know what aftercare is, but just for a brief definition, it's the idea that sometimes BDSM sessions can get quite intense. And aftercare is just kind of making sure that when the scene's over, both parties are okay and they know it was just a scene and anything that was said or done in that scene is not reflected necessarily in real life. Because she even says that in the audio where she's like, know that no matter how much I may degrade you in a scene, that in no way reflects what I actually think of you. Because I actually do remember, like, that's, I said this in my comment on Patreon, that I found it really a unique angle to make an aftercare video, because so often these videos are focused on the scene itself. Like, basically any NSFW that DA has ever posted. So to see, and she usually does slide in at least a few lines of aftercare in those audios, but to see an entire 18-minute audio devoted to this portion that's usually just stuffed on as an after that, I thought was kind of an interesting angle. And I won't lie, for a second I was even a little confused myself, because I was like, I know what aftercare is, but like, what? Because for once, instead of it being all sex and 1% aftercare, it was 1% sex, because again, like, it not actually shown, but like she mentions it, and then all aftercare. But even aside from the unique angle, yes, I thought it was actually a really cute one. Like, I know it says it's like a comfort audio, but to me it almost was more of like a playful, happy, romantic kind of, like, another thing else says it made me feel giggly inside to listen to this, because I was like, this is so adorable, because it's not a comforting audio in the sense of like, oh hey, I'm here for you, I've got you, let me just stroke your hair and everything's okay. It was more of like a playful flirting, and as she showers you with compliments, and it was just so cute, fluffy, sappy, romantic, and I really enjoyed it. And as a slight kind of callback actually to the previous Dom girlfriend, which is the one where like you spend the evening in and you have dinner in a bath, she hums Blackbird, or part of it, at the end. I was like, oh, nice callback to the last one. I really enjoyed this audio. It was just so adorable.
And apparently it can help you fall asleep. That's what I learned from it.
Well, if you're me, you cannot fall asleep when people are talking, so So as calming as it was, I wasn't sleeping to it. Not because it was bad, but just because I was like so eager to hear what else she would say that I couldn't fall asleep. I was too focused on like what she was saying. And also there's a nice binaural in this one, and I was like, this is nice. That's always a bonus.
And then next up, we had Dangerous doing a narration of a sleepy pasta, specifically Don't Let Them In.
Written by Maddie Kate.
And like I said, this one I didn't fall asleep to. This one just, I have like really bad ADHD. I kind of like lose track of what I'm doing very easily. And so audio roleplays, it's very easy for me to kind of stay like engaged because it's someone talking to me. And it's why I like movies a bit better, because if I'm not like listening to the words, I can like watch the screen, and like that helps me like pay attention. But even then, like as much as I love movies, I will occasionally go on my phone and just kind of like read random shit, and I'm like, oh fuck, I missed like 15 minutes. This is kind of like why I never got into listening to like creepypasta narrations and stuff. It's because I'm just hearing someone read me a story, and no matter how good the narration is, if like my brain ain't working that day, I'm not going to be paying attention. And so I didn't want to just have the video on and just kind of get bits of it. I wanted to actually be in a mood where I can pay attention. So yeah, this one I only listened to a bit of it. Although like to give one compliment in this, Dangerous's narration voice is very good. It was very like calming, but very creepy too. She had this like monotone, like there's no like emotion in her voice at all. At least from what I listened to. So yeah, I pretty much exhausted everything I could say. I'm useless right now, so Boggle, you go ahead and be useful.
He's always useful. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Anyways, yeah, no. I actually, funnily enough, like a lot of what Stephen just said about his inability to listen to narrated stuff applies to me as well. I usually also do not like audiobooks. So I only listened to this one just out of curiosity to just hear kind of what it sounded like, and because I knew I'd have to do this podcast. Like this is probably this podcast is the only reason I actually listened to the full thing. But I will say that I did also listen to it on double speed, because I also didn't have the patience or focus to get through the entire 40 minutes, so I cut it down to 20. And also, especially with narration stuff, you can just Google the story and read it yourself, and you kind of got it. So, no offense.
Kind of going with what you're off saying too. That's the thing about this podcast too, is there'll be a lot of times where we're just, as much as we love Dangerous, there'll just be times when something comes out that we're like not really interested in. But now that we're doing this, we pretty much listen to everything she does now. And so if there's ever time in the future where we're just like, it's nothing against her, it's just purely because we probably wouldn't have listened to it beforehand.
Yeah, this keeps us accountable. And also, to be honest, I actually do listen to everything she puts out. Some of the stuff, like, you can tell what I was less interested in, because my comments will be shorter, or there may not be any at all. Because, like, on this Sleepy Pasta, anyone on Patreon, I actually didn't leave a comment on it just because I felt like there really wasn't much to talk about, because it was not her original work. It was a story she read off the internet. So it was like, I suppose I could comment and say I appreciated the kind of distant thunderstorm sound effects she had. And like Steven said, the monotone, because I also found it creepy, but also relaxing, because that's basically what a sleepy pasta is, and she nails that part perfectly, managing to be eerie with the monotone, but it's also like soothing, and it's not like a frightening monotone, even though it's got a bit of ominousness to it because it's a horror story, and just to have a flat voice like that for 40 minutes is a little bit unnatural, but again, at the same time, because it's so soft-spoken, that's something you could lull yourself to sleep to. Because it was also like Steven said, with a role play, she's talking to you, so that keeps you more focused. But if you're listening to someone just read to you, that is slightly easier to fall asleep to, because they're not necessarily talking to you. But I will say, it was actually also funny. Me and a couple others were joking. There was almost some humor in the monotone if you really paid attention. The fact that she heard every freaking sentence in the same tone, no inflection, it almost got silly at times. Like, unintentional humor when you have a 40-minute long story. And she just reads it like this. Every single sentence is the same. Even if the action changes, it's just the same tone for 40 whole minutes. And I'm like, a couple times I did laugh. So, but to actually just briefly touch upon the story itself, even though, again, this was not like a Dangerous original or anything, I actually kind of enjoy. And also, I know that one of our 5 listeners is Todd, so I'm also including this part in just to talk, Todd, to you directly. You told me you weren't necessarily a fan of the story because you didn't like how the big twist was not something supernatural. I'm here to quote unquote argue and say I actually appreciated that because that's what this story does for you who've read or listened to it. It's basically about it's narrated by a girl named Emily, and she was talking about how she grew up in a very broken home and basically had to be raised by her older sister because her mother was addicted to basically everything under the sun. It wasn't able to be very available to them. And then, like, the really intense part happens when they think their house is being invaded, and you're left to wonder what it is. And the story does temporarily take a hint that it might be something supernatural, but it ultimately turns out to be something mundane. And Todd said that he was kind of disappointed that it wasn't more creepy and intense and horrific. But I remember saying, as cliche as it is to get the big twist that, oh no, it was something normal all along because the real monsters are inside of us. Wow. I had to say I kind of appreciated it because it would have felt too out of left field if it had been something truly supernatural. And furthermore, to me, like, the story was more tragic than anything. You know, the story of somebody being raised in a broken home like that. So again, I'm actually glad that they kept it mundane because I feel like if they had tried to do some dramatic plot twist where, hey, it really is like ghosts or zombies, it would have felt cheap. Like, it would have switched away from the tragedy and turned it more into another monster horror. So I appreciate that they ultimately kept with the more mundane aspect of it and was like, oh no, the big bad was something normal all the time. Because even if that also was a cliche, it felt like it kept in the somber and more tragic side of the story. So I actually appreciated that. But that really had nothing to do necessarily with Dangerous as part of it, since again this wasn't her story. But I thought it was definitely interesting to listen to, and I did actually Google it beforehand, so I kind of knew what I was getting into. Like, I skimmed the story real quickly and then listened to the audio.
Kind of made me lose interest in the story, by the way. Because that was one of the things.
Well, I mean,
that was one of the things that was like, I want to go back and hear this because I want to see. Because it's a creepypasta, and there's just always like a weird type of monster, or, like, supernatural thing that happens. So I was like, let me see what the thing is, and so.
well, that's why I actually read it first, because I'm a very fast reader. So I was like, rather than even with Dangerous reading double speed, I can still read faster to myself than she can narrate. So I was like, it'll be faster if I Google this and skim through it myself, and I can figure out the answers. Then I'll plunge into this long audio. Because again, even on double speed, that's still 20 minutes. And if you're me, 20 minutes is quite a while, because I actually, confession guys, listen to all of her audios on double speed the first time. Because I'm either looking at it going, I don't have the patience for 40 minutes. Or I'm looking at it going, this looks so good that I can't even wait for her normal speaking voice. I'm going to be speeding through this because I need to hear everything right now. And also, it sounds funny. Like, you listen to an erotic on double speed, it's so fucking funny and, like, oh my god. Anyways, tangent, unrelated, getting back on track. Stephen wasn't interested in the story. I ruined it for him. I fail at life and everything, and I should just leave right now. No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to stay around. This time.
Now the main event of tonight. Let's talk about Seduced by a Vampire. Why don't you go ahead and start?
Thanks for throwing me under the bus. Well, anyways, I guess I could say this is one of Dangerous's. I think this, aside from the original Yandere, is her oldest running long series that's still in progress. Because this particular Seduced by a Vampire Part 1 was dropped way back at the very beginning of her channel. And I think it even is the first, like, everybody knows by now that it crosses over with the witch and werewolf, but I think those were released after the vampire. So the Countess is like one of the originals of this channel, and it's such an incredible series. I mean, brilliant voice acting as always, because Dangerous does 3 different voices in the series as the Countess, Carmelina, the Countess's Italian vampire friend, and then Venus, the whatever the heck she is, kind of annoyance, thorn in the sides of the vampires. And just in the same token, like, not only is the voice acting phenomenal and diverse, but the characters themselves are all captivating in their own right because they're so freaking interesting. And it's incredible because if you think about it, the plot is fairly threadbare, because it's basically, you know, the Countess kidnaps you because she wants a new pet because she's lonely, and you happen to be the one she picks, and then it's just about your life with her. So there's not much in way of, like, plot, so to speak, and yet it's still so captivating, and you'll go through the entire series, I mean, and be like, well, what do you mean that was it? What do you mean I gotta wait for more? And actually, just as kind of like a personal aside, what I find interesting, a few of my friends on this Discord have told me, like, this was one of the first things they ever listened to with Dangerous. Like, I think even Cody himself said last week that the first DEA audio he ever heard was, I think part 4, the first time Carmelina ever appears, and I believe Maddie, who's another Discorder, said the same thing. Like, one of her first DA audios was part of this series. So this is a really phenomenal story saga, and so important to the fandom as a whole, because not only is it a classic, but it's drawn in so many people, and it's a Dangerous original. Like, this is something she wrote herself. It wasn't like a custom or a commission or anything. So it's a very and the Countess and Carmelina and Venus, they're all such iconic characters. Just as like when you say Disney and you think of Mickey Mouse and maybe a handful of others, you say like Dangerous, and you probably think at least of the Countess, if not the other two as well, because that's how integral this particular series is to the fandom and the Dangerverse as a whole. And it's just so phenomenal, so interesting and wonderful, and like packed with lore. And I could go on for years. I love it so much.
So, in honor of being the worst Dangerous fan ever, I'm honestly not that. I'm trying to think of my words carefully, because one of our 5 fans is gonna be like, "What? You hate the series? Fuck you! Die!" And I'm like, "Whoa, calm down, dude."
That one of 5 fan he's referring to is me.
Yeah.
I'm gonna leave. No, I'm just kidding.
So like, yeah, I've tried listening to this series all the way through multiple times. This was my at first I listened to the first like 3 episodes, and then I listened to the first 6, and now I listened all the way to episode 10, which, by the way, we're only covering up to episode 10 because we'll speak more about the crossover episodes at the later dates. And so I don't know what it is, but like I couldn't get into this series as much as other people could. Like, this is like probably not one of my well, I'm gonna say it's like in my top 10 just because I don't think Dangerous has like 100,000 series, even though it seems like she does. But fuck, I'm trying to like.
I'm gonna try to guesstimate what Steven's trying to say and say it for him better, because I'm super eloquent and stuff. But basically, from my guess is that Steven's made it clear he prefers like softer, cuddlier videos, and the Countess most certainly is not that.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing for you the sadism, because even for me that's a bit of a turnoff, is how, not just how cruel she is, but how like rude and disdainful she is, where she repeatedly calls you property and then demands to know why you keep trying to run away. It's like, well, why do you think, like, I get it, you're supposed to be a vampire, so you don't quite understand other humans, and you're a selfish person to begin with, so you really don't understand other humans, but the dissonance where she could outright be like, yeah, you're my property and I own you and I can do whatever I want to you and that's okay, and then immediately be like, why the heck do people keep running away from me? I'm like, is it not obvious?
Yeah.
Are you really that blind that you don't see it?
So
I'm guessing for Steven that was part of it, because I know your favorite series of all is the werewolf, and that's definitely the softest out of the 3.
So yeah, just in general, I'm not really a big fan of the Countess. Like, I thought like maybe if I listened to her the series, it would get kind of better, but it didn't really. Like, towards the end, I started to soften on her much more than beforehand, just because she's like telling us like her story and stuff. So I was able to feel bad for her. But just, I don't really enjoy her as much as most people do. Now, like, Carmelina and Venus, those are characters that I really do get behind. Like, I think everyone loves Venus. And then, Carmelina...
Except Grandpa.
Carmelina, though, I really enjoy. And this, to me, the series really picks up after episode 4, which is when Carmelina comes in. Not only just because of, like, Carmelina coming in, but it's really between episode 3 and 4 when Dangerous, like, I don't know, leveled up, I guess I could say, because like her audio's, her equipment's better, her like performances are starting to get like really good. I'm not saying she was bad early on, but like she really started hitting her stride around that point. So it's like, listening to the series, it's like a good like way to see the evolution of Dangerous, and so I really like think that's cool seeing that. And from there, like, the story starts picking up a lot more. We finally like have someone who escapes, and so we have a whole episode detailing that, which leads to Venus. And then when we start getting to the crossover stuff towards the end, that's something that like I was like really starting to get pumped for, because like I know like, oh yeah, shit, like I'm finally gonna understand this whole puzzle now, because I've only listened to the werewolf stuff beforehand. So I haven't even listened to an episode for The Witch yet, which like I said, we're covering that next week.
God.
So I'll be able to finally give my thoughts like on the Witch series. But yeah, other than that, like, as much as like I love vampires and stuff, like, I don't know. I guess because most of like the vampire stuff I want to I enjoy listening to, like ASMR or role playing base. I can enjoy it a little bit more because it seems like they actually want me around. Like, I don't know. I hope I'm making sense.
So it's. I think. Oh, okay. I'm just gonna say. I think for part of the reason most of the fandom enjoys the Countess is even though she is an unlikable character, if you accept that as fact and do not see that as like dissonant with having positive feelings for her, that's how it works. Because like part of my intrigue with her is that she manages to remain so unlikable. Because I was worried that she would go the path that a lot of characters her style go down, where they start off very unlikable, but then the author does some big reveal, and then you start to sympathize with them, and then you start to like them, and all along the way they soften up. Because even though we see a micro version of that happening with the Countess, it doesn't reach the level where I feel like a lot of stereotypical archetypes of this nature go. And basically what I mean is, even though we now have her backstory, and she's outright said multiple times that she truly cares for the listener, and that she's not as vicious as she seems, she still manages to be incredibly selfish. And even if she's not all that bad, she's still not all that good either. Because like here's an example with like Stephen King's Carrie. You know, she's supposed to be a bit of a freak, but as you read her story and see into her life, the readers are supposed to begin to sympathize with her and realize she's not as bad as she seems. And then it's like, oh, boo-hoo, poor little Carrie. But the Countess kind of subverts that, because even after you get all the backstory and all the sob story, she still acts like such a pretentious, selfish, controlling jerk that it doesn't soften her up too much. And I kind of appreciate that they didn't go the total route of just, oh, now she's just secretly hurting inside, and that's why she's so mean. Because even if that's a part of it, the fact that that Dangerous does keep her a little bit nasty even to this moment, like even in the Cuddles with the Countess, which I suppose if that's considered canon would have to occur before the crossover because of the state of the listener. There's a perfect example where it's like you'd think, oh, now she's cuddling us, we're supposed to like her, but like when she says, hey, I want to cuddle you, her immediate next line is, that wasn't a request. Like she's still bossing you around. And it's like, oh, so you're still a little unlikable. So that's why I personally like her, is the fact that as backwards as it may sound, I like her unlikableness. And also I think the other appeal is sexy vampire lady, and then the other appeal is, let's be real, a lot of this fan base is a bunch of subs. Not even just simps, but a bunch of subs. And the vampire is very domineering, and so that appeals to a lot of people. So I think it's a mix of, the sex appeal, and then the dom appeal, and then just if you're interested in this sort of complex character, even if she's a terrible person, you can still find her interesting. Like anyone who likes a villain in a show where it's like, you'll acknowledge this person is terrible, but you still find them so interesting. And you're like, oh, I want to follow their adventure and see what happens next.
I think
so. That's my best bet.
I think the thing is too, it's less that like, oh, I'm like upset that I'm with like such an evil character, because I like evil vampire characters. Like I like most Dracula movies. I really like Interview with the Vampire. Lestat's like a terrible person, but he's still so fun to be around. So I don't know. Maybe it's just like I don't know. Like I can't really like. I feel like such a bad host right now because I can't quite like get what I'm trying to say
fan
out.
Ever.
I can't really get like what I'm trying to say out. It's just I don't know. I guess that's at the end of the day that's what it is. I don't know, and it's at this point where I'm glad we don't have a lot of fans, because only like one or two people are going to be like, dude, what the fuck are you talking about?
And I'm one of those people, so it's okay. No, I'm just kidding.
But like I'm definitely not gonna, if you're like, this is your favorite series, I'm like not gonna be like, oh, it's your favorite series, well, you fucking suck. Like I definitely get it. Vampires are awesome.
He'll do that, but only after we stop recording.
But like I get it. Vampires are awesome, and being like a big fan of like Carmelina, like just enjoying like her presence and everything, and like thinking like Venus is like this really cool like villainous character. It's definitely what kept me going. And there was some really good episodes of this one, like not just the Venus episode and stuff like that, but like I really did enjoy the episode where you learned about her backstory. I do like her later reactions, and even like saying like kind of like disproving the whole I don't like having people be mean to me ones. I do like the episode when you go back to when you are like taken back to her. and she's basically like threatening you in a very vampiric way. So I do like the series. It's just I don't think it holds the same level of hype it does for most people on this in this fandom. One thing I'd like to cover is like kind of like the wacky like time frame this takes place in.
Oh my god, the timeline. Whew.
There's like,
That's an episode in and of itself.
yeah. So it's the too long didn't read version, and the obvious answer is Dangerous didn't realize what she was gonna do from the beginning. So she kind of just did what she want and didn't really care about like certain things that happened in past episodes because she's like, what fuck ever, it's not important. But the things that always confused me about this one is she stated in a Q&A that these crossover series take place in the past. When exactly, she doesn't say. It's in the past. And so you can basically leave it up to interpretation. But in the very first episode, a flashlight is mentioned, and flashlights didn't come in common use till like early 1900s. That's not really like, and then it doesn't help that like the Countess, one of her first lines is like, "Oh yeah, that's a lantern. Yeah, I like old-fashioned things." So it's like, okay, like this, how far past does this take? Does it take place like 30 years in the past? And then it doesn't help that Venus constantly makes like modern day references, which one can either tie into like what she is, what kind of creature she is, or Dangerous just wants to make those references and who the fuck cares. But if it helps at all, Dangerous has said, I don't know if this is canon. She's probably not going to remember she said it, but I did, but I do because I'm a weirdo who remembers shit like this. As she has said that the first episode is a flash forward. Like, apparently, like,
A liar.
she did state this though. I'm not making this up.
She did say it, but I'm pretty sure that was just her way of trying to cover her.
That was her way.
We
That was her way to get me to
we
leave
are
her
gonna-
alone, basically.
well, because it's like because Stephen pointed it out once. Every time the Countess is mentioned, someone's gonna be like, "So Dangerous about that flashlight," and we're never gonna let her live it down.
Yeah.
So that was one of her ways to try to get us to shut up. Is be like, "Well, okay, so maybe that episode was a flash forward." So it's like, no, it wasn't. We're just pissing her off because we're like, flashlight. And also, actually, one thing, if you want to confuse it even more, and you've listened to the Doctor's Orders series, and they've got the Italian Carmen, and you accept that to be some version of Carmelina, that throws the timeline out of whack even more because Doctor's Orders is, for the first episode, implied to be just your typical average modern day story with references to cars and movie theaters and modern doctors, like vaccination stuff, like checkups, stethoscopes. And that literally in part 3 or 4 is when this Carmen character is introduced and people were like, oh my god, is it Carmelina? Like, so if that's the case, that throws it even more out of whack. Because, I mean, hypothetically, you could argue to wait that the village and the forest that the crossover takes place just happens to be technologically behind compared to certain other parts of the world, because that's not unheard of. But otherwise, yeah, if you're trying to find an exact year, that ain't happening. Because, I feel like when people hear stuff like vampire, werewolf, and witch, they do think like Victorian era, so 1800s. But again, like Stephen just said, with the mention of a flashlight, that's not quite true. And again, Venus's references, and again, possibly Carmen in Doctor's Orders being Carmelina. So yeah, it's probably mostly what Stephen said, because I think Dangerous did actually confirm that herself once. She said a lot of her earlier episodes she did not script. She just kind of got in the studio and started talking. And because of that, she wasn't always able to keep everything straight. So these little lines that seem so throwaway in the past suddenly cause continuity errors down the road, because also, like Stephen said, there's probably no way she thought this series would become what it is today. So she was probably figuring, this is, because we make fun of Todd for that too, where we're like, this man keeps throwing out every new idea that comes to him, and now this story has no plot and yada yada. It's like the same deal. I think it was one of those, Dangerous went in with a vague idea and ran with it, and now suddenly we're like, but wait a minute, that doesn't make sense. And she's like, shut up, it makes sense because I said so. Oh, I was actually one random thing. If you guys do follow her Twitter, for some reason her description has the year 1842 in it. So I even once asked her in one of the very first Saturday calls, I was like, is that like a reference to something? Is that when one of the series was set? And she's like, no, that was just a random year that sounded cool. So I almost thought I was smart. I was like, maybe that's what it is. Yeah, she said making ASMR and roleplay videos on YouTube since 1824. My bad, 1824. And I even asked, I was like, is that a reference to one of your series? Like maybe the vampire series? And she's like, no, it was just a random year. But now there's a tiny part of like headcanon series in 1824.
Also, Venus is in Venus's first appearance is in her own little 3-minute short story, and that takes place in modern
Oh
day
yeah,
too.
Pay It Forward. Yeah, that's another one that takes place in modern times because coffee shops, cars.
Yeah, which leads.
But that's another one that I don't even know if we have confirmation of whether or not it's Venus. It's the same voice, but
No,
she never said out.
There's a confirmation. She references it.
Oh, there is?
She references it in the first episode that Venus is in the vampire series. She's like, "Hey, you've heard this character before. It's in this episode. It's in this thing I wrote."
Oh, dang, I must have missed that. Yeah, so that one I would accept as a flash forward, to be honest, for real. She said that Pay It Forward thing was a flash forward. I would accept that because I mean, obviously we still don't know what Venus is, but in the series she says, I'm almost as old as this forest itself. And if it's as big of a forest as I've heard it said, then Venus is pretty dang old because forests don't just pop up in a year. So I would totally believe she's some sort of immortal creature and that she would have lasted from whenever that forest began to, modern day where we've got coffee shops and still being her same old annoying self.
And then I'm not gonna get into that. Never mind. I was gonna point out how the Yandere werewolf series is kind of confusing because they keep using things like village and stuff like that. But in the very first episode, they mentioned how he has a wolf girl poster. Posters didn't really poster like that wouldn't have existed until like maybe 10 years ago.
I also like how you said you weren't going to get into that and then you immediately went into that.
I'm not going to leave that in the episode.
Oh, okay. You bring it up next time, like when we do the werewolf, because of course you saving the best for last.
Yeah. Well, that's also the Zura Fenris werewolf episode series, not the Alpha series.
Wait, what?
I was say that's from the real Yandere werewolf series, not the series of Alpha.
Oh yeah. Well, then why did you bring it up in this audio?
Well, no, because I just wanted to. That's why I didn't bring it up. I just wanted to mention it. To you.
Oh, because I didn't know. Is that werewolf also supposed to be living in the same forest? Because that's another thing, listeners. Even though the crossover itself is only the Countess, the Yandere, but really Tsundere werewolf / Alpha, depending on what you want to call her, and then the witch. A lot of people reference forests in their own stories, and sometimes they imply that they're the same forest as the crossover trio.
That's just
So I
fanboys being
can't
fanboys.
remember who is who anymore, and like how many characters are actually in Dangerous's forest, and how many people are like Stephen just said, or wannabes, or how many are in their own forests. So, because I was gonna say, I don't think the Nana, the actual Yandere werewolf, I didn't think she was part of the trio's forest. So that's why. Because for a second I thought you meant Alpha, and I was like, did they reference Wolf Girl posters in Alpha? Because it's been a while since I've listened to that one. So I was like, maybe that was a line that I forgot. So that's why I was so willing to accept that, because I was like, Stephen probably is a master on the Alpha series, so I don't remember any Werewolf Girl references, but I haven't listened to it in a long time. But no, I don't think. I think the real Yandere werewolf is supposed to be modern time, because like you just said, they've continuously referenced the listener being into wolf girls. And you could argue the fact that the werewolf herself says stuff like head pats, that's not exactly. I know that we didn't. This generation did not necessarily invent that word, but that's not a word you would have heard in the Victorian era. I don't think nobody would ever say head pats back then.
Do you have anything else to add on the vampire series?
No, that long random tangent. So that concludes this episode with the vampire. Wait next week when we tackle the witch series. And unlike Dangerous, when we say it'll be a week, when we get that audio out, we mean a week. We don't mean a year. Hang on a sec. I think I just heard somebody knock at my door, even though it is currently 11:52 p.m. my time. I'm gonna go see what the heck that was. But I'm just going to talk to you for the 2 minutes it takes you, because I don't want to just sit here in silence for 2 minutes. But actually, I have to admit, I think I think I listened to the werewolf series first, and I listened to the vampire series second, but I still freaking exactly remember, like, not the date of when I first listened to the vampire series, but what I was doing. I was literally in the Indiana Memorial Union having lunch there because I kept forgetting they had a food court, and I was like, oh, I need to try their food because I've eaten everywhere else in campus. Let me try this. And I had a grilled cheese with fries, and I was literally sitting at one of the tables just outside the joint and putting ketchup on the fries when I was like, oh yeah, I gotta listen to the vampire series. I got the rest of the day off, so this would be a good time to power through it, because I'm the person that likes to marathon, all or nothing. I either sit through the entire thing in one shot, or I don't listen to it at all, because because I did the same thing with Jekyll and Hyde. But yeah, I was literally sitting there eating grilled cheese and fries slathered in ketchup, listening to parts 1, 2, and 3, I think, before it took me 3 parts to finish my lunch. Because again, double speeds, that was about 15, 20 minutes. And I could hardly hear it because she was so soft spoken, and I was in a food court. It was loud, and I'm sitting here with shoving the earbuds deep into my ear holes, trying to hear what she's saying, max volume, and I'm mentally telling everyone else in the food court to shut up because I'm like, hold on, I can't hear this vampire. She's too quiet. I think I lost my dog, and I think she just kidnapped me, and she said something about a flashlight. What is happening? Oh, this is really good. And then even on the way back to the dorm, it was just loud outside. It was windy. There are people around, buses around, and I'm still trying to listen to this. Went back to my dorm and literally just sat on my bed for the entire rest of it because I can't multitask very well when I'm having to listen to something. So it wasn't like, oh, I listened to her while I was doing homework. I can't focus like that. So I literally just sat on my bed and listened to the rest of it, and I was like, oh, so this is who this character is. That was really good because I had known about these characters before via the werewolf because it crosses over with the vampire eventually, but to actually hear the Countess side of the story was like, oh, that's who that was. This is good. I freaking like her. And I'm also weak for sexy, possibly lesbian vampire dom girls, so I mean also it hit every nail for me. Because if you know anything about Carmilla, I'm like, hey, that's why even though all the series, I think, the vampire series is gender neutral, I still headcanon the listener as female. Because the witch is canonically a male lover, and I think the werewolf is also gender neutral. So it's kind of like a joke for myself. I'm like, okay, so the witch's listener is male, the vampire's listener is female, the werewolf is some form of genderqueer or non-binary or gender fluid. So that way we can have equal on all counts. But yeah, I just headcanon because I mean, depending on how much you read into it and whether or not you personally accept any parts of the not safe for work as canon, it's implied that the Countess Carmelina done did the do. So they're both at least bisexual, if not completely lesbian. And I'm like, yes, I love this.
To me, all vampires are bisexual. I always take it as vampires don't really give a crap about gender after they become a vampire.
True, yeah, that's a decent headcanon. Because that's a wonderful thing about fantasy in general, is how you can play fast and loose with rules. Because actually, I've seen some that almost go the opposite way and say that vampires sometimes are because this was meant to be a subversion. Because yeah, there's the stereotype that vampires are creatures of lust and therefore they'll do anything that moves, including members of the same sex. Or like you said, they just think that they're no longer human, so they're no longer bound by typical human rules. So even if the rest of humanity says, oh, homosexuality is a sin, they're like, we don't care. And so, like you said, and they'd be more open to bisexuality / pansexuality and polyamory, et cetera. But I saw one interesting theory that kind of subverted that and wrote the idea that because vampires are associated with being old and physically old, like Dracula's an old man, but also old, the sense of, oh, hey, this one was born back in the 1600s, the idea that they're actually very sexually conservative to the point in which they sometimes don't even engage in heterosexual relationships because that's how strict they are with themselves, or that they disdain the concept of human sexuality because they see it as a weakness or a sign of mankind's kind of how we're all, all the memes about how we're all thirsty and simps. They'd be like, oh, humans are so weak because they're slaves to their sex drive, but as vampires we are above that and we do not do the do with anyone. So I've seen some rare subversions where not only are vampires not bisexual or gay, but they aren't even straight.
Yeah, it's basically what I was That's literally what I said.
Well, no, you said you headcanon them all as bi, but I said I've seen some where they're like literally.
Oh, well, I'm just saying that because it's simpler than saying all that.
Well, no, because the headcanon I was referring to is that some of them say that they're completely celibate, abstinent. They don't have sex with anyone.
Oh, no, I don't like that.
Well, like I said, that was meant to subvert the stereotype of all vampires are bi, with the idea that they're actually so arrogantly proud of themselves that they don't engage in sex because they see that as a weak humanistic thing, and they're like, we're not humans, we're vampires, we're better than humans, we don't have sex. Or just again, like, you imagine a person who was born and raised in the 1600s is probably very, puritanical. So the idea that they become a vampire and they retain those life lessons, and they're like, no, I'm not comfortable with all this sex stuff.
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I don't like that.
Yeah, I don't like that. Steven's a wonderful. Me going on 5 minutes long, not shutting up about anything, and Steven's, yeah, I don't like that. You're very concise, which is good because I never shut up. Anyways, your laptop all plugged in?
Yep.
It's been plugged in for 5 minutes, hasn't it?
I've been waiting for you to say
You're like, when is this girl
I
gonna
don't want to be a
shut
dick
up?
until.
Anyways,
I don't want to be a dick and just be like,
Boggle, shut
yeah,
up.
I need to get.
No, I
back.
talk so long.
I need to get back to the episode
Well,
now.
hang on, it's like I talk so long that not only did you have time to plug in the laptop, but it's actually now completely charged. Anyways, yeah, going back. Now it's your turn to talk about your thoughts on the series.
That's gonna be fun.